Mr. Dark Whispers.
It all started because I offered my wife's tombstone a tuna sandwich. Yeah, I know, it sounds insane, but when your world shatters, when the love of your life is ripped away in an instant, sanity becomes a luxury you can't afford. For months, I was a ghost, a hollowed-out shell barely existing, until one day, a simple, absurd gesture at a gravesite brought a flicker of light back into the darkness. A flicker that, unbeknownst to me, would soon ignite a fire that nearly consumed me, born from a web spun by a woman who preyed on the broken. If you've ever felt the icy grip of grief, if you've ever yearned for connection only to find yourself ensnared in a nightmare, then hit that like button, subscribe, and prepare yourself. Because this isn't just a story about love, loss, and a tuna sandwich. This is a story about betrayal, about the depths of human depravity, and the terrifying truth hiding behind a seemingly innocent smile. Get ready for a tale that will make you question everything you think you know about healing. Emma. Her name tasted like sunshine and laughter on my tongue. Our first date was on a sprawling, sun-drenched beach. I was nervous, fumbling, trying to impress. I'd asked her, "Do you like tuna?" And in her bright, open way, she'd simply smiled and said, "Sure." So I made sandwiches. Simple, unpretentious tuna sandwiches, made with what I hoped was an abundance of love and care. I painstakingly cut off the crusts, added just the right amount of dill pickles, her favorite, as I later learned. We ate, we talked. We fell into each other's orbit with an ease that felt preordained. Picnics became our thing, a ritual. During that first magical year, almost half our dates involved a checkered blanket and, inevitably, a tuna sandwich. It was our inside joke, our simple pleasure. But on our first anniversary, back on that very same beach, as I held out that familiar sandwich, Emma looked at it, then at me, and her beautiful face crumpled into a mock grimace. "Okay," she confessed, almost whispering. "I've got to tell you something. Tuna? It's repulsive. I'd literally rather eat it after it's gone through my digestive system. No offense." I just stared, then burst out laughing. The sheer audacity, the years of silent suffering. She explained that on our first date, the moment that first bite hit her tongue, she'd wanted to bleach her entire mouth. But then she'd seen the meticulous care I'd put into those crusts, the dill pickles perfectly placed, and she simply couldn't bring herself to hurt my feelings. Guilt, she said, was a powerful motivator for suffering. From then on, for every picnic, no matter what we were actually eating, I'd always jokingly offer her the first bite of my tuna sandwich. It became our joke, a testament to her kindness, my oblivious affection, and the silent, hilarious sacrifices we make for love. Then, last year, the laughter died. Valentine's Day, the day meant for celebrating love, became the day I lost mine. She was speeding home from work, excited because I'd cooked a romantic dinner. A dinner she never saw. A life we never finished living. For 3 months, the world was a blurry, silent film. I barely climbed out of bed, the simplest acts of living feeling like insurmountable mountains. Eating, shitting, existing. It was all a mechanical, joyless chore. My apartment became a tomb, my soul a hollow echo chamber of sorrow. But then, one impossibly sunny afternoon, something inside me stirred. A random, inexplicable impulse. I found myself packing a picnic basket. The old red blanket, a thermos, some iced buns, and yes, tuna sandwiches. Without a conscious thought, I was in the car, driving towards her. Her grave sits at the top of a gentle, grassy knoll. An ancient elm tree, twisted with wisdom, casts a benevolent shade over her resting place. There, I laid out that familiar red blanket, and without thinking, as if Emma herself was sitting across from me, I held out a tuna sandwich. "Here, Em," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. First bite. The absurdity of it, offering a sandwich to a cold stone. But then, it hit me. The memory of her mock grimace, her feigned repulsion, and for the first time since the accident, a genuine, unburdened laugh bubbled up from the depths of my chest. It felt liberating, a tiny crack in the wall of grief. From that day on, whenever the weather permitted, I went back. These picnic dates with Emma's tombstone became my lifeline. They brightened my mood, anchored me to a memory that wasn't just pain. And before long, I got to know Harry, the groundskeeper, a gruff but kind man who just nodded knowingly as I unpacked my basket. In August, as I unfurled the blanket, a sudden, playful gust of wind ripped it from my hands. It billowed, a rogue red sail, and swooped across the face of a lady standing down the hill. Instinct took over. I raced over, apologizing profusely as she clumsily tried to free herself. I wrestled the blanket back, and the woman underneath, she had real Disney princess energy, all wide, innocent blue eyes and a cascade of curly black hair that seemed to dance in the breeze. Her name was Ruth. She was visiting her late husband, Christian Mary. The name stuck in my head immediately because my first thought was, Merry Christmas. From then on, when I visited Emma's grave, sometimes I'd spot Ruth at that same spot. We'd exchange a friendly wave, a silent acknowledgement of shared sorrow. Then one afternoon, as I was packing up my picnic, she strolled along the path. "Walk you to the gate?" she asked, her voice soft, almost melodic. "Sure," I replied, a surprising lightness in my chest. On the way past, she paused, reached out, and gently touched Emma's gravestone. She smiled at me, a sweet, understanding smile. "So what's with the sandwiches?" she asked, a curious tilt to her head. "Sometimes I see you and it's like you're showing off what you ate to the tombstone." I explained the ritual, the bittersweet meaning behind the tuna. Her eyes, those wide blue eyes, seemed to soften even further. "That's so sweet," she said, her voice laced with what sounded like genuine empathy. "Christian loved tuna too." She faced me then, dead on, her eyes suddenly intense, locked onto mine. And she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet resonating with an unnerving conviction, "Do you ever think grief is heavenly?" The question hung in the air, heavy, unsettling. I managed a weak, "Sure." Down the hill, another nasty gust of wind swirled, and Ruth, almost theatrically, did a pretend dive for cover, as if another blanket might attack her. I burst out laughing. A genuine, unforced laugh. And in that moment of shared, unexpected lightness, I asked her to coffee. That night, the barbs of grief stung me anew. What kind of bastard was I, asking for another woman's number practically within earshot of my wife's grave? The guilt was a physical ache. My friends, bless them, reassured me. "You haven't broken any rules," they insisted. Even Harry, the groundskeeper, weighed in. "That pretty lady's been around here for years," he said, with a twinkle in his eye. "You two would be good together." And so over a series of coffee dates, I poured out my grief to Ruth. She was a patient listener, her blue eyes always reflecting a deep understanding. "I feel exactly the same," she'd say, her voice soft. "I thought I was broken too when I lost
Christian. She rarely talked about her late husband. When she did, the details were vague, almost evasive. I figured some pain was just too raw, too recent to share. I understood, or so I thought. The first night we spent together happened by accident, a dinner date that simply ran too long. In the morning, after I kissed her goodbye, I found myself throwing my back against the door, sliding to the ground, sobbing. Casual coffees were one thing. This had morphed into a full-blown affair, and I was terrified. Terrified of facing Emma's grave again. Terrified she'd rise from the earth to kick my ass for moving on. Earlier this year, Ruth had problems with her asshole landlord. I, being the gentleman I thought I was, suggested she stay with me. Temporarily. For a few months, I truly believed I'd left the past in the rearview mirror. We even went on a few picnics, though, ironically, I never made Ruth a tuna sandwich. But things changed. The first tremor of unease. She asked, "How should we celebrate Valentine's Day?" Valentine's Day. The first anniversary of Emma's accident. The guilt, thick and suffocating, swung back with a vengeance. The dirt around Emma's headstone was still fresh, still raw. What kind of husband jumped into another relationship so fast? The thoughts hammered at me, a relentless tide of self-condemnation. In the end, I decided I needed to move on, sooner or later. So I made a plan. Visit Emma on Valentine's Day morning, confess, seek her silent blessing, then spend the afternoon with Ruth. I just needed to break the news ahead of time, not on her death-iversary. So I pulled out all the stops for a killer picnic, despite the crappy weather. On that grassy knoll, the air was thick with unspoken grief and a chilling dampness. I'd barely finished unscrewing the coffee flask when the tears came. Hot, stinging, unending. I confessed everything to Emma, about Ruth, about how I'd never meant to move on so fast, and how deeply, profoundly sorry I was. Emma's grave took the news surprisingly well. In all seriousness, deep in my gut, I knew she would have wanted me to find happiness. I had unloaded my burden, and I felt 50 pounds lighter. The only thing left to do was finish a quick side quest, visit Christian Mary's grave. He deserved to know the new guy in Ruth's life thought the world of her. I walked past the elm tree, past Emma's grave, and checked the headstone where Ruth usually hung out. A married couple were buried there, the Presleys, not Christian. I marched around, going in circles, widening my search. No Christian. A prickle of unease started to crawl up my spine. At the groundskeeper's shack, I asked Harry about his grave. Harry, ever helpful, consulted his notes. Then he led me past the hill, through an alley of trees. Christian's resting place was further along than I'd ever seen Ruth hang out. Weird, but not as weird as what I found next. According to the inscription, Christian Mary died on the 6th of October, 2 months after my blanket blew onto Ruth's face, 2 months after we'd met, which would have meant she'd been hanging around his grave before he died. The world tilted. At dinner that night, I tried to play it cool. "Hey, so," I began, my voice attempting a casual nonchalance that I knew wasn't there. "I know this isn't an easy topic, but where's Christian buried?" She froze, a forkful of casserole halfway to her mouth. Her blue eyes, usually so soft, narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Why?" she asked, her voice tight.
Well, Valentine's Day is the anniversary of Emma's accident, so I was gonna pop by. I thought maybe I'd pay my respects to Christian too. I tried to keep my voice light, adding, "He's on the far side of the tree, right? Just down the hill?" Her eyes flickered. "He's further down."
But then why? I didn't like getting too close. Standing over his grave made me sick, okay?
I understand. I paused, letting the silence hang. By the way, when did he pass? March? April? Why are you interrogating me? Don't you realize how hard this is for me? The suspicion festering in my gut, I did the only thing I could. I Googled Christian Mary. And there it was. An article about a freak sailing accident. The body of Mr. Mary, 34, recovered from the water near a jetty off the coast. Ruth Mary quoted as saying her husband fell into the water while on deck to check a fishing line. The date? August 6th. 2 months after our cute meeting. 2 months after she'd supposedly been visiting his grave. Something didn't just not add up. It was a gaping, terrifying chasm of lies. But over the next few days, anytime I even tried to broach the subject with Ruth, the waterworks started immediately. She'd accuse me of interrogating her, then ask me to hold her while she cried. How was I supposed to get answers from a woman who dissolved into tears at every question? Ruth still visited the graveyard. So the next time she set off, I tailed her. Trench coat, sunglasses, a terrible disguise, but my mind was reeling. I expected her to make for the hill, for Emma's grave, or even Christian's real one. But instead, she went around the valley, past a tranquil lake. In a completely different section of the cemetery, she sat alone on a wooden bench. I felt like a rotten turd. Maybe visiting the actual grave was too painful for her. Maybe my suspicions were just a product of my own wounded mind. As I turned to leave, a man with a scraggly beard sat beside her. They started to chat. Now and then they touched each other's arms or threw their heads back, laughing. Obviously, they knew each other well. After 20 minutes, both of them stood up. And then they shared a weird, awkward kiss. Unplanned, judging by how neither of them knew what to do with their hands afterward. Part of me, the part that wanted a dramatic confrontation, screamed to run up, to make a scene, to bust them apart. But too much was racing through my mind. I bolted out of there instead. What did this mean? Did she lose interest in me? Was that why she never talked about Christian, because this other guy was a better listener? As strange as this sounds, a massive sense of relief washed over me. It felt like I deserved to be cheated on for betraying Emma, a twisted form of karma, a perverse balance to my grief. Back home, Ruth came through the door. She kissed me as if her graveyard romance had never happened, as if the man with the scraggly beard didn't exist. In the end, I decided the affair needed to wait. Valentine's Day had almost arrived. I had enough problems to deal with. Hell, maybe explaining the situation to Emma would help me straighten the whole mess out. On the morning of the big day, I wrapped 2 tuna sandwiches, slipped them into my picnic basket, along with a thermos of coffee and some iced buns. I got halfway out the door when Ruth's voice called from upstairs, saccharine and sweet. "Honey, can you come up here? There's a giant spider in the tub." The bathroom was pest-free. "Must have scurried off," she said, her smile too wide, too innocent, as I came back down. And then she handed me my keys, a casual gesture. But something felt off. The air in the house was suddenly heavy, cloying. At the graveyard, my heart cracked in half even before I laid out the blanket. The morning was cold, damp. I confessed everything to Emma. How I'd met another woman, how that other woman had met another man, and how the whole messy affair felt like a cosmic punishment for daring to move on too soon. Unloading my problems felt 50 pounds lighter. I wiped away the tears, my hands still trembling, and finished laying out the picnic. Then, like always, I offered Emma's headstone the first bite of a tuna sandwich. Since she wasn't hungry, I helped myself. That first bite, it seemed off. Not in taste, just wrong. A visceral alarm bell shrieked in my head. My chest tightened, my breath hitched.
I reminded myself how to breathe, but it was like sucking oxygen through a straw. I went to wipe away the sweat that suddenly beaded on my forehead, but my arms felt impossibly heavy. I grabbed for the thermos, and by now my hand was trembling violently. I thumped my chest, desperate for air, my lungs burning, screaming for oxygen. Finally, in a desperate, heaving gasp, I spat the bread out all over Emma's grave. Part of me screamed, "You're dying!" But a louder, more absurd part screamed, "You just disgraced your wife's grave, you prick!" I remember rolling onto my back, the world spinning, a terrifying kaleidoscope of gray sky and green grass. And then I saw her, standing there. Ruth, the dark silhouette against the pale winter sky. I clawed at the air above my chest, pleading for help, for air, for a goddamn breath. When that didn't work, I gestured wildly at my throat, my eyes wide with terror. Then I noticed it. The remains of my tuna sandwich in her hand. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't an accident. This was an ambush. Without warning, she straddled me, pinning me to the cold, damp ground. Her face was no longer the soft, empathetic Disney princess. It was contorted, a mask of cold, predatory fury. She forced more tuna into my mouth. The taste of mayo and pickle, usually so innocuous, now became a vile, suffocating horror. I gagged, my body convulsing, desperate to reject the poison. I had to stop her. I bit down, hard, on her fingers. She ripped her hand away, a low, guttural growl escaping her lips. But she didn't scream. She didn't yelp. She didn't cry out. She just narrowed her eyes at me, a pure, unadulterated malevolence burning in their depths. Next thing I knew, her free hand clamped my nostrils shut. My last desperate gasp for air was cut off. In her other hand, a clump of tuna, poised and ready for the second my mouth opened. And then, her voice, a chilling sneer that cut through the roaring in my ears. "You're not the first, you know, but you were the sweetest." The tuna thing, that really touched me. Most men can't love dead women like you do. Dead woman. The words echoed in my head. I craned my neck back, my vision blurring, and looked straight up. Emma's grave was only a few feet above my skull. A terrifying, horrifying realization. My wife's tombstone, her final resting place, was witnessing this nightmare. I bucked my hips, a surge of adrenaline, pure survival instinct. Ruth flew forward, her head slamming straight into Emma's tombstone with a dull, sickening thud. A trail of dark blood trickled down the cold stone, right above the point where it said, "Beloved wife." And then, with a choked groan, Ruth rolled onto her side, incapacitated. My body wouldn't quit shaking. I felt like I was drowning, my lungs burning as I rolled, tumbled down the hill, right into the middle of a funeral procession. A group of mourners, each dressed in black, screamed in alarm. A priest, his face contorted in anger, threatened to have me arrested, until he saw the shade of blue my face had turned. The ambulance ride was a blur. My first clear memory was waking up with an IV in my arm, the sterile smell of a hospital. The nurses said the first thing I asked, through my drug-addled haze, was if they thought Emma might ever forgive me. A blood test confirmed it. My tuna sandwich had been laced with fentanyl. Inside the picnic basket, they found an envelope addressed to Emma. In my handwriting, a fake suicide note, saying no woman could ever replace her, so I was committing suicide via poisoned picnic to honor her memory. The man Ruth met on the bench, Gavin, eventually told police everything. She told him her most recent boyfriend committed suicide, and she went there to visit his resting place. Said they bonded over their mutual grief. Ruth, naturally, is denying everything. Says I'm completely insane. So far as I can tell, she's some kind of black widow. A predator who has a terrifying fetish for bereaved husbands. The police are still trying to make sense of this mess. The second I got out of the hospital, the first thing I did was visit Emma's grave. And there, beneath her headstone, someone had left a tuna sandwich. I think I'm done with romance for a very, very long while. If this story gave you chills, if it made your skin crawl, smash that like button and tell us in the comments. What's the most unsettling encounter you've ever had? Do you believe in karma or something darker? And of course, subscribe for more terrifying true-life tales that prove sometimes the real monsters aren't in your nightmares, but walking among us. Stay safe out there.